I always used to look at the casualties and the bodies that we pick up in MERT as just a really precious piece of freight, because I think if I started to humanise them, then that really would have been the undoing of me, and I think a lot of people felt the same. We just kept going because nobody wanted to let the side down. The things that we saw down the back of the aircraft, at least we weren't lying on the stretcher, so we were the lucky ones. My name is Liz McConaghy, and I spent 17 years flying with the RAF Chinook fleet. I was 21 when I became the youngest aircrew member to deploy to Iraq, which was followed by 10 deployments to Helmand province in Afghanistan. The biggest honour of my career was serving on the medical emergency response team and tasked with recovering wounded soldiers from the battlefield. The highs and lows I experienced doing my dream job came at a price. I attempted to take my own life after being haunted by what I'd seen and done during my service. This is my story. I thought I just want some purpose in life. I want to do something that makes a difference, and I knew that joining the military and travelling the world and going to all those exotic countries that I thought I'd be going to was going to do that. And it turned out that I ended up in a lot of hot, dusty places, but not maybe so many exotic places. I was only 19 when I joined and suddenly found myself, in a very steep learning curve to becoming aircrew. So whenever I finished basic training, I became a sergeant straight away, which is quite a huge rank to carry on your shoulders. So the Chinook, I always say, was the love of my life. It's such a unique aircraft. The smell of the aircraft always, it'll stay with me forever. Despite having taken me to some of the worst war zones in the planet, I've never felt as safe as on the back of a Chinook. In the early days in Afghanistan, because there wasn't as many troops on the ground, there weren't as many bullets flying, there wasn't as many IEDs being stood on, and it was actually really quite quiet. But as it started to ramp up, things started to get very kinetic very quickly. So the first thing I really noticed was that the MERT shouts started to get busier, which is the medical emergency response team. It started to get pretty tasty pretty quickly. And that was kind of the indicator that the whole theatre was starting to ramp up. My busiest day on MERT, we had 14 shouts back to back, picking up injured troops and bodies, bringing them back to Nightingale, which was the HLS at Bastion, and then turning around and going to the same again. I've seen people being brought over the ramp who'd already died on a stretcher and being brought back to life on the back of the aircraft. And at one point in Afghanistan, it was the only place in the world where you could survive a non-survivable injury. And if you've got to take one good thing away from what happened in Herrick, is that we absolutely led the front in terms of medical science. I joined the Air Force to do a job. I joined the Air Force to have purpose. And Afghanistan gave us that in bucket loads. Every day, we were saving lives and we were rescuing troops that were pinned down. We were taking ammunition and water to them. So that sense of purpose lasted for the 10 years of that campaign. So I left the Air Force in 2019 and I'd flown for over 3,000 hours in the back of a Chinook. So I'd been essentially rattled to death by the time that my neck started to play up and I was medically discharged. And I was gutted. I joined the Air Force for life. I was going to stay there forever if I could have done. So to suddenly be, without that uniform, I just felt really invisible all of a sudden. In March 2020, Boris Johnson locked us all down. And as that year went on, I started to become unravelled. And I think looking back now in hindsight, a lot of it was to do with that sense of purpose was gone. There was absolutely no reason to get out of bed in the morning. All of my coping mechanisms that I'd had throughout my time in the forces for the trauma that I'd seen were suddenly gone as well. And I think up until that point, I dealt with all the stuff I'd seen in Afghanistan really well. The main trigger for me, knowing that I was really in a bad way, was one night when I couldn't sleep. I started to look up the back catalogue of a lot of the soldiers that I'd picked up on MERT who had died, finding out, were they married, did they have kids, were they engaged? And it really, it started to really, fester in my head. And I started to get just random thoughts in my head that I couldn't get rid of. So every time I tried to put my head in the pillow to go to sleep, the noise in my head, the chatter just wouldn't quieten down. I woke up on the 12th of August in 2020 and just decided that today was going to be my last day on earth and I was going to take an overdose and just end all the noise and get rid of the chatter. Tidied the house, had dinner, had a shower, did my hair and makeup, and at midnight took an overdose of 95 amitriptyline. So 2 days later, I woke up in intensive care. I had this tube down my throat and I just kept clutching at it and trying to grab it because I thought I was going to drown. I just couldn't breathe. My overwhelming emotion was, I don't want to die. which is so far removed from the emotion of 2 days before that, because 2 days before that, all I wanted to do was die. I got released from hospital and started the recovery journey. And I feel so lucky that I'm a veteran, because I got so much help so quickly, being in the veterans kind of system. I played the Veterans Lottery since way back in 2019 because I'd seen some of the stories of the people it was helping. I never for a second thought that that would be me. If it wasn't for the Veterans Lottery giving the funding to the Veterans Foundation, you know, the people that helped me, the counsellors that helped me wouldn't be there. You know, all those support networks, all those people that put their arms around me when I needed it the most just wouldn't exist. You know, the services wouldn't be there. So it's absolutely essential that people, you know, contribute to that and can help people like me, who there'll be somebody else watching this who will never think it's going to be them, and in 4 years' time might need it as well. If you would like to help veterans like me rebuild their lives after service, then please play the Veterans Lottery. It really does make a difference. Thanks.